Hello, everybody. How are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Happy Sunday. I hope it's Sunday where you are. It's going to be Sunday, or it was just Sunday just passed. So it's good to be here today again. It's going to be an amazing time. We're going to have a lovely time having our usual chat. Remember, we're talking about the You, you and Your Money series. We're still on what series one, and what we're talking about today. What rules your wallet? Is it logic or emotion? This is something that is very interesting to me because one of the things I've been looking to understand for a very long time is what actually controls how my money has been spent. So that is what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to keep it very serious. Oh, sorry, I said serious. Imagine that. Very down to earth. No technical registry words today. We're just going to be talking about the basics of what we need to talk about today. So, to start with, one of the things that I think is crucial that we need to talk about there is when we're talking about what controls your wallet, what controls your money, is it logic or emotion? What are we trying to talk about? What is it I'm trying to get us to think about today? It's the bottom line there is what is responsible for the decision making when it comes to your finances? How and what influences your decision making process as regards to your money? Why is this important? If you do not take the time to understand what goes on between that process, which is what I call it, the financial decision tree, how you get to make decisions that leads to what you do with your money, you're always going to be treating the fruits of the problem. You will never get to the roots of it. So let's talk about it then. When we talk about decision making, how do you decide what to do? It's been often said several times that decisions decide destiny. Basically, everything how we do is pinned down. It's actually is guided by the decisions we make. An average human makes about well over 350 decisions every day. Even people in incarceration, what happens when you're being incarcerated? Basically, your decision making is being limited to quite a few. So from the time you wake up, you start to make some decisions subconsciously. You wake up, the side of the bed you get down from, when you get up from the bed, what you do next. When you do that, when you go, do you go straight to brush your mouth? Do you go? One thing we've done there is we've allowed habits to truncate some decision makings so that we don't run out of the willpower to make decisions eventually. So a lot of the things we decide most of the time, they are automated. But when we slow things down, now just imagine right now, slow everything down and begin to think about it. How do you make decision? So let's say, okay, when you wake up, do you first go straight into the bathroom and brush your mouth? Or do you get up, go on your knees, say your prayer, or do you immediately reach out for your gym clothes, get into your gym kit, and hit the roads? These are things that you make decisions on every day, general life. Now, let's narrow this down to what we're talking about here is about your money. One of my biggest mentor when it comes to financial freedom and personal finance is Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey says something, he said it time and over again. He says personal finance is 20% head knowledge and 80% behavioral. What does that mean? It means what is responsible for your personal finance. It is to a larger extent about your behaviors and a lower extent to about the knowledge you have. What is trying to say that there are no new ways of inventing how to be good with money. We've all had it over and over again. Our grandmothers, everybody's told us, how do you get good with money? Very simple. Get a source of income, spend less than you make, invest the rest. As simple as that is, imagine the world we're in right now struggles to do just those three basic things all together or one after the other. It's quite simple that you've got a source of income, a way where money comes in. You're spending less than you make. Whatever is left, you put into a savings or you invest it. Those are the simple steps. Now we're bringing things down granularly, but why is it so difficult that even governments cannot even balance their books? Well, we're not going to go there today. But as individuals, we all know that the grandmother will say, save money for a rainy day. Why? It always rains. But statistics shows that almost 64% of Americans do not have anything in their emergency fund. Basically, they were not expecting there's going to be a rainy day, but everybody knows it happens to everyone. So, what is this saying? This is telling us to say, you know what? If we're doing these things we're doing with money, we should take a step further below that. And that is what we're doing today is okay, now, when I have money, what decides how the money is being spent? Is it logic? Is it my head? Or is it emotion? Is it my heart? And this is where this is the two extreme ends I'm using here right now. So these are the two extreme ends in terms of how do you make your decisions? What influences your decision making? And there's something we all know. They talk about the market. It has been said time and over again. You hear this, the market is irrational. The market is, what are the other terms they use? The market is unstable. The market is cyclical. It goes like that. It goes up, it comes down, things like that. What we're trying to say there is when you look into that context, when we're talking about markets, we're talking about humans. So that means yourself and myself, we are people that come together and we make the market. So we're saying our behaviors are quite irrational. There is one of my favorite books is by I think it's Dan Ariely, and that book is Irresistible, Predictable. I can't remember the title of the book. But what the book is saying there is it's trying to understand how we make the decisions we make. And most of the time, is it the head that makes the decision or is it the heart? And this is what we're going to be talking about today. So let's take, for instance, now, I'll pick an example. When you're about to have lunch today, how did you come to the decision of what you're going to eat for lunch? Is it number one? Is it logic? What does that mean in this sense? Is it logic because this is what is available for you to eat based on the data available? Or is it your heart that feels like, because I'm hungry, I feel like having that, having that, having that? Without money being a constraint, would you have gone with what logic says you have for lunch, or would you have gone with what your heart says? Or did you eventually go with what logic says you're going to have for lunch, or have you gone with what your heart says you have for lunch? Should I quickly make rice in the house, or should I go for takeaway? Should I order Uber Eats, or should I actually fix myself a sandwich? Now, these are things whereby you continually get bombarded with. And one thing about human beings there is very few human beings could say they don't have feelings. When people say, oh, I don't have feelings, how would you know you don't have feelings, basically? So we're not going to the extreme ends of the spectrum today. We're just going to stay within the generalization and say, okay, let's look at people in general and say 90% of everybody. So we're all humans. That means we're bound to be influenced by our emotions. At the same time, we have our head, which is what allows us to be able to make logical decisions. So between logic and emotion, from your point of view, which one do you think influences how you make decisions? And I'm going to say this has got nothing to do with gender. So when we say, oh, women are more emotional and men are more emotional, I'm a man, I can tell you, men are emotional, but they just bottle it up in the presence of other people. And when they're either by themselves or they're within people they feel vulnerable with, you can see how emotional men can be. So this has got nothing to do with gender. This is about your ability to be able to say, okay, have you ever sat down and decided, okay, the last time you spent money, what happened? Have you sat down to think about it? That the last time go through your bank statement, look at what you've spent today, if you've spent money today or yesterday. Now go through each of the transactions and trying to think, take a step backward and say, okay, how did I come to make a decision to make this purchase? Unless there are those ones that you've made a decision about long before, that the consequences are catching up with you. But we're still going to come to that. So, how have you made a decision based on what you've just done recently? What you have fresh in your memory. How did you come to that? I'll give you an example when it comes to mine. I like to think that I lean more towards the logic side. Basically, I like to understand what the data says, what the logic says, the number crunching and everything before coming to make a decision. But do you do that every time? Do I do that every time I make every transaction? No, I don't. No, I don't. I found out that when it comes to things that I'm emotionally connected with, I throw out logic. When it comes to things that I'm not emotionally connected to, I gravitate towards logic. And it's something that it's taken me a long time to admit. So when we say, or when some people are saying, how on earth can you get to spend that amount of money on that thing you've just purchased? What it means there is you're speaking because that particular area is not an area where you have your emotional vulnerability. Let me quickly go into the chat box and say, oh, thank you. So that is one thing you need to be careful, wary of. So whenever you hear people say, no, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that. No, let us see how you perform in your areas of emotional vulnerability. Some people, it is shoes. Anything else, it is logic. Their brains tells them what to do, they weigh the consequences. Can I afford this? Can I do that? But get them close to a shoe shop, and all of a sudden, they throw logic out of the window. And this is what happens in the market. We said the marketplace is really, it's not rational. That means there is a trader comes in the morning, he had a bad day at home, things have not been working, whatever that is, emotional burden, he gets in, it's short on decision-making ability, he's been frustrated. When you tell that person to continue to make decisions relating to the market, they will make that decision from a place of emotional vulnerability, not from the place of logic. And that is why several times when people do things, we look at it and say, how on earth could you get to make such a decision? And several times we watch people do things and we say, how on earth could you get to do that? And that is where we're coming until today. So the first thing I will gladly tell you there is every single one of us in general, we've always and continue to fight the battle of logic and emotion. I'm not going to come in today and tell you, oh, when it comes to money, it always has to be about logic. Why? It is not possible. As long as you're living, as long as you've got breath in you, as long as you've got your ability to have emotions, your emotions would always influence your decision making. Let me take an example in a particular area. When it comes to dating and you want to date somebody and things like that, that is why we wondered and said, how could this person be dating that person with all the data available to the contrary? And we could not understand it. And this is because, number one, there's been an hijack of their emotional capability, basically. That means they've seen the person, emotionally they're connected. And out of the two schools of thought, the one that is most powerful is your emotions. Your logic will continue to nag, but your emotion is what has got the power to hijack your logic. Very rarely, without much discipline, does your logic hijack your emotion. Because this is a skill set that we need to prune, we need to develop the ability. See, the brain is very lazy. This is how the brain works. The brain is very lazy. The brain likes to put things into chunks, into packages. That is how the brain becomes efficient. That is why it's not everything you see, everything around you can see. You see what you train yourself to see. You can perceive what you can perceive. You hear what is within your frequency. So the brain, for the brain to be able to process information and for you to function as a human, the brain needs to find the way to be very, very efficient. And the way the brain can actually do that is what? The brain likes the ability to be able to say, okay, it looks like blue is blue. It looks like red is red. It looks like this is this. So that way, the brain can truncate processes and things so that you can quickly make decisions and go. That is how the brain works. Now, there are times whereby you need to now slow the brain and say, because one thing you need to understand there is, in the world we live in, people who have taken time to understand the human nature, they know there is a way they can hijack your emotions. And they would always, most of the time, amplify that frequency. Because if I can hijack your emotions, I can hijack your decision making. I can influence it, not hijack it. Let me use the right word, influence it. If I can influence it, if you're not strong enough in your ability to know how you make decisions, I can eventually influence your decision making towards what I want you to do. Let me give you an example of what happens with adverts. When we watch adverts and we see George Clooney sitting down, having a cup of coffee, espresso, he has an espresso machine, and they do some silly things there. And all of a sudden, what are you trying to do? They're trying to tell you, for you to be as good looking as George Clooney, God help me with that one, for you to be as successful as George Clooney, you have to go and get yourself a coffee. Why? Because this is what successful people do. Successful people go and buy a very expensive machine and they buy the tabs and put the tabs into it and they have coffee. So right now, there's been a programming that has happened there, and there's a subtlety about how they do it, because very frequently they play it over and over and over again, and the message begins to go into me over and over and over again. Now, the whole point is to hijack my decision making when it comes to the time when I'm going to actually decide to either go and buy a coffee machine immediately, or when it's time for me to buy a coffee machine. So when the day came, I never used to like coffee, but I like, wow, that's cool. George Clooney coffee machine, that must be a good coffee. That must be this. Then slowly, they're beginning to what? To influence that process in terms of, do I really need a coffee machine? I'm a coffee lover. I love coffee. I love it so much. So, and I could see why I'm giving this example is I know how this has worked on me so much, to the point whereby I've almost so close to buying a very, very expensive coffee machine, because I was like, wow, coffee machine. For George Clooney to be advertising the coffee machine must be good, is reputable, is this, is that. So within the emotional influence, they're giving me cases for my logic to comply with, so that purchase will be done easily. So this is what happens there. So when it comes to you parting with your money, everything around you, that is what salesmen do. Salesmen come and present either logic or emotion or both, and use their ability to quickly identify which one speaks to you most, and being able to know how to eventually navigate your decision-making process to get into your wallet. That is why when it comes to your money, the first thing you need to have there is your ability to have the discipline to know you do not buy anything you want to buy immediately. Dave Ramsey says, have a cooling off period of 24 hours. Give yourself the ability and the discipline to say, okay, if it's between 0 and 10 pounds or $10, or equivalent in whatever country you're watching from, I can do that immediately. Now, when we're going from that particular range to a particular range, I've got to come back home. If I still feel I need it, then I go back there. Now, if it's now eventually a particular amount of money, then I've got to sleep over it. The next day, if I still feel about it, I've got to sleep over it again before I decide to make it. Because there's been times, I can remember there was a time we went to Dubai. I can't remember when, I think a couple of months ago, and we got to the airport there and we met these guys. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to sell us an apartment. It happened in America, I think about 8 years ago as well. They were trying to sell us a condo. They were giving us what? Different reasons why this condo is the best thing that ever happened since the creation of man and all of this. And one thing they would always try to do is they will force you to make a commitment. And I told them, I said, when it comes to something like this, I always have what? A 24-hour cooling period. That means I'll go home, sleep over it. When I wake up the next day, my wife and I will sit down, we talk about it. If it's something we want to do, we go ahead with it. They did not like the response. Why? Because they know that they've been trained to the point whereby they've gotten us excited with all the supposed facts. There are ways facts could actually be manipulated to manipulate your emotions. So they've got within that period of, they've used facts to convince us of, you know what, over your lifetime you can save this amount of money. And even if you don't want to go on holiday, you can sell the holiday thing, you can do that, you can do that. These are things that would happen maybe once in a lifetime, and they will paint it as if it happens every day. And there are a few desks around, and I could see people signing their lives away. Maybe they can afford it. Who knows? I don't know that. But one thing I can tell there is they will frustrate you to the point whereby they use pressure. They use so many different ways to influence your emotion, to get you excited. Then they will now make you feel guilty for you to now make a decision. So does that mean that having feelings and having emotions-based decision is bad? No, it is not. What I'm trying to tell you there is, I'm trying to make you aware that these two school of thoughts are so critical when it comes to your wallet. Neither of them completely by itself rules how and what takes money out of your wallet most of the time. I'm prone to the fact that, I get analysis paralysis, whereby too much of data, if I want to do something, I look for data to the point whereby I'm unable to make a decision. That is where an analysis paralysis comes to place, whereby I've got too much of data, there's too much logic in play, whereby I could not just simply make a decision. So what that means there is, it is not always bad when it comes to emotion. And there's been places whereby emotions just jump in back. It's just like when you go to a car showroom where you want to buy a car. When you get in there, they say hi to you, they do this, they open the car for you, the car has just been washed, the car is smelling, they said tell you to get in there, sit down, do you want to go for a test drive? What they're doing there is they're massaging your emotions so that you can quickly come to a point whereby you make that decision. But is that necessarily bad? No, it is not. It is the ability for you to know which, most of the time, predominantly, what all of us are actually predisposed to one than the other. Mine is logic. I'm more predisposed to logic than emotion. When it comes to money, it's all about, I run the numbers through my head. I was not always like this, though. I used to be very careless when it comes to money, in terms of it doesn't matter. But after a while, I became completely, and this is what happens when you get onto your, what I call your financial independence, your financial literacy journey. To start with, you will run completely and be operating 100% on logic. It won't last long because eventually you'll crash and burn. It is for you to understand the school of thought. Both of them are in play. Number one, that is the first lesson from today's. Your logic and your emotions, as long as you're alive, they will continue to be a battle between them. Your responsibility is to create what I call a balance, a place of harmony, where both of them can coexist when it comes to the decision making. What am I trying to say? When it comes to emotion, especially to the finances, two of the greatest emotions is fear and greed. Have you ever wondered, whenever you go into a store, you see they will tell you everything is going out now, they're running out of stock. You see the sale price, you see this and all of that. Even when you go online to websites, they would show you the last time somebody bought it, they will show you the number of seats left. All those things are using data to manipulate your emotion. And they're trying to manipulate two emotions there. They're trying to see which of them is going to work. Is it fear or greed? Both of them are not completely wrong. It's getting a balance there. Why? Because fear and greed, if used properly in the market when it comes to money, they will be of great benefit to you. I can remember one of the greatest investors of our time, Warren Buffett, says something. He said, be very, very fearful when everyone is greedy, but be very, very, very greedy when everyone is fearful. That means when the market is going up and everyone is buying, that is the time for you to be fearful that something is not right here. And when everybody is fearful and there is a big sellout, that is when you'd have done your homework and you can be greedy about that. So it is not because one of them, in cryptocurrency, there is this thing called they call it the greed, the fear and greed Bitcoin, Bitcoin barometer, whatever it's called. It measures the state of the world when it comes to fear and greed. And about 6, 7 months ago, it came down to the point whereby fear is not even there. It's like minus, minus, minus when it comes to fear. And a couple of weeks ago, I can see that dial is going back up again. It's saying between fear and greed, we are navigating right in between there. So what does that mean? These two emotions, the two emotions that you need to be aware you all have them. See, there's nobody called a fearless man. It's not, or a fearless woman, or a fearless human being. No. These are people who have gotten the ability to control both the fear and the greed in them. And most of the time, it is your ability to have a period in between those two that allows you to be able to. And one of the greatest strengths of investor and money control is your ability to be very, very patient. That does not mean you take forever to make decisions, but do not rush to make decisions. See, on this life, I have come to realize there is nothing final. There is no final success. There is no fatal failure. No, there is always that room for you to know that, okay, I can take a moment on this, especially when it comes to life changing decisions, is being able to understand what role does it play. And when it comes to your money, you must be able to know which of these two are you predisposed to. Some people, they are so fearful they will never get anything done. I remember Will Smith said something. He says, it seems God has put the greatest blessings in life at the other end of fear. That means to get to it, you have to go through fear. And one thing that I continue to hear from successful people in their fields is they feel the fear, but they do it anyway. So understanding there is fear when it comes to how you manage your money and there is greed at the same time is being able to balance the two together. And then now let's go to the place of what I call the place of logic. See, logic is so crucial. Why? The reason is because your emotions can be easily manipulated and easily hijacked. See, if people are your friends and they're close enough to you, they will know how to short circuit and hijack your emotions. But whenever there is a counterbalance of logic and you build this muscle, you build this ability through continuous practice, when it comes to your finances, you have a written down budget. Your budget is there. If it's not in the budget, it's not happening. When you get to a place where logic is your blueprint, emotions would help you but will not override the key decision making. It would only be an addition. When it comes to your money, let's say you've got your budget, everything is laid out, you know who you are, and you go shopping, and all of a sudden there's this lovely dress you've been looking for like all your life, and like, wow, I can see myself in that. That is meant for me. You enter the shop, you look at it, and trust me, in the best shops, they have the best sales assistant. Right away, they can spot you from a mile away. They say, that is one to be had. And they come to you, hi, how are you doing? Wow, that would look great on you. Should I get you another size? Do I do this? All they're trying to do there is they're trying to hasten your emotion to just override that. But you've gone in there, you've looked at the dates. When it comes to that decision-making process, when you slow down, when you dial down and you let logic plays in, and that is what I do. And what is my logic? My logic is I've got different rules for different situations. I have something I call my affordability matrix. My affordability matrix says before I can buy anything, I have to have the physical money to buy it at least 5 times over. That is my affordability money rule. You can have yours. There is no generic, there is no model out there that says one is the right one. So when I get into a shop where I could see they've got lovely things they have to sell and all of that. And then when it comes to decision making, I've trained myself to the point where I will always slow down. See, before I hand you my cash or my card or I get you my phone to scan, I will always take a breather and I'll say, okay, let me take a walk around once more. All I'm doing there is I'm allowing that my programming to kick in, my affordability rule. And immediately my affordability rule, my logic goes in and runs the numbers. And that goes in and says, okay, can you afford this? The guy trying to sell you things is trying to sell it to you regardless if you can afford it or not. The moment you sell it, you are a number to them, you are out of the store. Bam, that is it. So when I run that through my affordability matrix, and I know what my affordability matrix is, I said, okay, this thing is £100 times 500. Okay, at this point in time, do I have £500 in that account that I can spend? And knowing it is not all the money you have that you're predisposed to spending if you've done your budget accurately. See, once I go to that point and my logic tells me, pam, 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 will it work? It ain't gonna work. Why? Because you can't afford it. Immediately, I don't have any shame in it. I will say, oh, thank you, not today. Now sometimes you see somebody who's been so nice to you, they will like to use some emotional blackmail. You can't work on me because I know the moment I leave that shop, they're focusing on the next person. So that way, I've been able to create a model to allow me to balance things out. My question is, do you have a working model to balance your emotions and your logic when it comes to your decision-making process? Or are you even aware of what your decision-making process is? Are you an impulsive buyer? Are you an impulsive spender? You know, the research has actually been done that when you pay for things cash, you feel the emotional pain than when you pay with a card. And we all know we are in the economy right now where everything is cashless. One of the things we'll talk about later there is the story of money. And you would see one thing money likes is money likes what I call money likes mobility and speed. What does that mean? Money likes to be able to move around and to be able to move around fast. And one of the things the market has been able to do there is they've been able to identify that. So there's something they call friction. They know friction allows you to make frictions create triggers that create that awaken your logical thinking ability. That is why some websites, when you go on them, if God does not help you, you will buy what you don't intend to buy. Why? Because they are frictionless. Once you go, you browse, pam, 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 you go, it brings your favorite things. It brings what is there. Before you know it, your card is already listed there. Before you know it, they put everything there, pam, 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 with 2 clicks. Bagam, they will deliver the next day. It's because they've been able to understand that friction wakens that logical thinking part of you. So some people have put in so much effort to make sure that your experience is what they call frictionless. While what are you trying to do? They're trying to make your buying experience quicker and easy. See, the more they are working to make your buying experience quicker and easy, the more you should fortify your decision making process. I don't know if anybody's actually witnessed this way, but there's some websites you go, though you're looking to buy some things, the process is so clunky that you just check it out. Just, you know what, I'll do it some other time, and you never get back to doing that thing because at that time maybe the emotion of retail therapy jumped into your spirit, and you just feel like, I'm not feeling too well right now, let me just see if I could buy something to make myself feel better. That is for a different conversation, for a different day. How different ways we use emotions that takes money out of our pocket, but not for today. So it's, what's the summary? It's being conscious of the decision making process when it comes to your money. Because if you are not, there are billions of dollars being spent by the big corporation to make sure they understand, to make sure they manipulate, to make sure they influence your decision making process. And whoever influences or successfully influences your decision making process is got the ultimate power to control you. Because if I can influence how you decide, I can eventually design where you're going to end up. Because life is all about decisions. Right now, where you are is a sum total of all the decisions you have made in your life. Right now, you really want to know what's the quality of your decision making? Look at yourself right now. So if you look at the state of your money and you don't like what you see, you don't like the product you've seen so far, it's because number one, you've made bad decisions. Number two, your decision making process, you were not aware of it and it's been manipulated. Number three, it is being hijacked. There are several times that I wake myself and say, wake up. So it is your responsibility to be aware of your decision making process. Number two, to design a process that will continually balance your decision making. Do you know that when we talk about decision making, there's something called the willpower? I'm not going to go into this that much today, but when it comes to willpower, what that says there is when we all wake up, we have a fresh bank of willpower. That is the bank where whenever we make a decision, we are actually taking from that willpower reservoir. And that is why you'd see people, a lot of billionaires right now, they wear almost the same thing. That is why you'd see this Facebook guy, he just wears gray t-shirt. That is why you'd see what's it called? You see Bill what's it called? This Apple guy, Steve Jobs, he wears his jeans and he wears his black hooded top. Why? Because it makes it easier for them not to actually drain that reservoir of willpower earlier on by thinking, what would I wear? What would I wear? What would I wear? You need to be aware of this. Your decision making ability is very, very limited. And it's been proven by data that most of the wrong decisions that happen mostly happens towards the end of the day. What does that mean? It means it is towards the end of the day when your decision making is so low that it's either we break our promises, we break our diet plans, we don't do the things we need to do. That is why they say to do the first things first when you have an abundance of reservoir of willpower. So by the time it comes to end of the day, you've actually made decisions. So the key decisions have been made. So whatever is left, you can deal with it. So when it comes to your finances, do you have processes that safeguards, that serves as the equalizer that balances how and when you make decisions? One of the things which I do teach people to do there is number one, know thyself. If you know you're predominantly a spender, please, you have to guard, because there are some things you cannot completely change out of you. It's been hard coded into you. So what do? You leverage on processes to enhance that vulnerability. So if you know you're predominantly you spender by nature, you know that when it comes to it, there's nothing wrong with being a spender or being a saver. It's just because it's how we approach it that matters. If you know that is yourself, when you're going to design a process around yourself, you make sure from the first day that your income comes in, you have several accounts where all the essential payments go into. Pam, pam, pam. The one that goes into your giving your tithe, the one that goes into paying your core bills goes in, the one that goes into your savings goes into your investment goes in, and the ones you have left for you to what I call fine boy or fine girl money, or they call it baby girl money or baby boy money, whatever you want to call it, it goes into another account. So when it's time to go out with the boys or to have a good time, whatever it's in that account as a spender is what I spend. So if I can spend it, whatever I have for the whole month in one night, bagam, I know the next day. If boy says let's go, nothing, boy, I can't do anything. Why? There is no money because I've created a system. And if you are an order as well, where you hoard money, whereby you can wear one just for 10 years, nothing is wrong with this. Bro, life is for the living. So it's being able to understand who you are predominantly and being able to wire yourself. And are you a logical thinker or are you an emotional thinker? Are you one of these people that when people comes to you to sell you things, you cannot say no? There are some people like that. Once people approaches them like this, they are captivated. They've gotten their attention. And though they might not want it, but because of their heart and that vulnerability, how many times have we bought things? Have we spent money on things we don't really want to? How many times have we gone to events people invited us to that we could have just said, no, I can't come. Why? Because I couldn't afford it. Why? It's not on the budget. How many times have we allowed that emotion part of what would people think to influence and our decision making? Eventually, it leaves us in a rut or in a financial mess thereafter. You know the greed about when it comes to spending the money you don't have. It's all about greed. And that is where bad debts come into play. Each time you make a decision to spend what you don't have on a liability, basically that is greed in play. Why? The money you don't have, using to buy what you don't need to impress people who don't care about you. So it's being able to understand how all of these simple, unsimilar things connect together and they're creating the building blocks of your decision making. And eventually, some of us, when we go into a store and someone comes to us, we don't know how to tell them, oh, sorry, I just want to look around. And they bring something we don't want to buy. I say, okay, I'll just take it. Well, how much is it? Just £2, you don't. So it is when you understand, but you can only understand when there is an awareness that there are always two schools of thoughts when it comes to your money. And it is your ability to know that, okay, I have a de facto decision making process when it comes to me spending my funds. If it's this particular amount of money, it doesn't matter, But when it gets to that particular wins, I have my feel safe period. If it's more than £100 like this, bro, I've got a 24 hours minimum. Why? Because I know that within 24 hours, I would reason and ask myself, do I need it? My affordability rule comes in. Can I afford it? And please, affordability, I'm just going to chip this in. It's got nothing to do with how hard you work. And this is a trick our mind plays on us. I work so hard. I've been doing all of these things. I deserve this. I only deserve what we can afford. And when I mean afford, I don't mean with somebody else's funds. I don't mean it with funds that is meant for your savings, your children's school fees, or that is actually meant for your bills or is meant for investment. It's meant with the funds you have left after all that for you to attend to the wants of life. I am not one that says you don't need to look after your wants. No, look after your wants, but make sure that your needs are met first. And there are some stages in your life whereby you're in so much of a financial mess, you cannot even consider your wants at that time. All your needs is to get out of debt, to stay balanced, and to make sure what comes in is sufficient for what goes out. So it's wow, it's almost 45 minutes, and I promised today I didn't want to drag it too long. So tonight I'm going to be drawing the curtains on the 1 minute and say thank you very much, everyone. And remember the key lessons for today there is when it comes to your money, always ask yourself, do I understand the decision making process? And how do I balance between the logic and the emotions when it comes to parting with my funds? So until the next time we meet, which is going to be another 4 weeks, I'm going to be coming live to you at the end of every month, hopefully, for as long as I can. So till then, thank you very much. And this is Coach Mo from Power to Know. Stay blessed.